I knew Julie too well to think she would really leave me alone for 2 months. And I was right. The phone calls started a few hours later. I anticipated what she had to say but didn't know because I let the answering machine pick up, putting it on silent so I couldn't hear her, and deleted all her messages without listening. The same thing was happening at work. For the first week, she left message after message, either to my voicemail, which I deleted, or from Marielle, the office manager. I had already told Marielle that I would not take Julie's calls, so at the end of the workday, she simply walked up to me with an ironic smile on her face and said, "6 more calls today," or whatever the number was. I nodded and thanked her. Monday after work, I noticed Julie had come home to get some new clothes and things. I was even a little surprised she hadn't come back over the weekend and tried to break into the house. But maybe the depth of my anger when I confronted her on Friday night had scared her too much. Anyway, Monday night, her bedroom closet was empty and several dresser drawers emptied. Her makeup disappeared from the bathroom and she took a framed baby picture from our dresser. And of course, there was an envelope in the middle of the dining room table, addressed only to my husband, Alan. I tore it in half and tossed it in the trash. I decided that her sister would be next, either her or Julie's father, but that would mean confessing to him, and that seemed unlikely. Sister Sarah would probably be sympathetic to Julie, while her father would tear her apart for cheating on me. I knew he liked me, and I really liked him too. Sure enough, an hour after I got home from work on Thursday, Sarah rang the bell. She began, "Alan, I know you're—" I raised my hand in front of her face, interrupting her before she could continue. "Hi, Sarah, it's good to see you," I said cordially. "Let me make this as clear as I can. I'm not going to have any conversations with you related to Julie or the mention of her name. Is that clear? If you're here for any other reason, by all means, come in and we can talk. Have you had dinner?" Looking a little shocked at my firmness, she just blinked at me, then said, "No, Alan, you know what I came to talk to you about. It's just that she's so—" I interrupted her again. "That's enough, Sarah. I'm not kidding. I'm not talking to you about her or listening to you about her." She stared at me for a moment, then sighed. "Okay, Alan, have it your way. I'm sorry you're doing this, but it's your decision." I didn't say anything back to that. I watched as she walked back to her car and, shaking her head, drove away. Things were more complicated with the kids. Knowing Julie, she would call them both, and then Brian and Bethany would decide together that she, my little girl, should be the one to talk to me. She always had a way of getting me to do almost anything she wanted. But when the bell rang, Bethany was in for an unpleasant surprise. "Daddy, it's me," she began. "What's going on between you and Mommy?" "Hi, honey," I replied. "How's school going? It's good to hear your voice." "Dad, Mom called Brian and I and she—" "Beth, stop it," I interrupted her firmly. "Your mom and I are going through a difficult time right now, and that's all I want to say to you and Brian about it. We both love you very much and will always be there for you. Other than that, sweetheart, I don't want you or your brother at the center of things, and I'm not going to discuss them with you." She snorted slightly. "But Daddy, she's so upset and I—" "Bethany, that's enough. We can talk about something else or we can stop talking, okay?" There was a long silence. I could see my daughter contemplating how she could get around me. "Okay, Daddy, I think I got it." She talked to me for a few minutes about school and her friends. Then suddenly she said, "Daddy, Mommy said you—" I interrupted her again. "That's enough, Bethany. It was nice talking to you. Bye, sweetie, I love you." I hung up the phone. Somehow the message did get through, and when Brian called a couple days later, he honored my ban on talking about Julie, for which I was grateful. The next few weeks were empty and lonely. Given the alternative, it was exactly what I wanted. I spent a lot of time alone. I didn't really feel like going out with friends, so at the end of the workday, I would sometimes have a beer with my coworkers and then go home. I did a lot of reading. I did yard work, catching up on my reading, and I spent a lot of time at the gym. I always worked out a couple times a week, but I wasn't a fanatic. It was mostly to keep myself a little more in check as I approached middle age. Approaching 44, I didn't want to look as flabby and saggy as some of the guys on my block. Now, however, I started exercising enthusiastically, almost eagerly. I went to the gym 5 to 6 times a week, sometimes for a run, sometimes to work out with weights or on the machines. After a few weeks, my 3 miles on the treadmill in 30 minutes turned into 4 miles in less than 34 minutes. My 120-pound bench press and 210-pound leg press started going up to about 180 and 300. What I liked most about running was that it was painful. I would set up the trainer for unexpectedly steep climbs, and I would storm up them feeling the burning sensation in my hamstrings and lungs. I think I liked that pain because it was so intense that it temporarily superseded the other pain, the one that had been with me all along, the pain about Julie. It seemed to me that every time I increased my speed for the last half mile, I was overcoming the helpless rage and frustration I carried within me every day and every night. Truth be told, I also loved the way I began to look and feel. I lost about 8 pounds. My legs, arms, and chest became firmer. I had to buy pants with a smaller waist, and my t-shirts became tight around my arms and shoulders. I even noticed the occasional approving glances from one or another of the ladies at the gym. But while it was flattering, what was more important to me was the hard work, the pain. I needed to stop feeling like a helpless victim and more like a guy in control of his life. Of course, I wasn't in control of my life yet, but as long as I was running, I was in control. I sent Julie away for 2 months because I knew I needed time to figure out what I wanted. No decision made in the blind rage of those first few days would have made sense. At first, I dreamed of killing her, publicly humiliating her, beating her boyfriend to death with a tire iron. Justified feelings, but not the wisest alternatives. By the end of 2 months, I was calmer. I hadn't stopped being angry and resentful, and images of my Julie with another man's man still plagued me constantly. But I was no longer in a frenzied rage or helpless despair and could think more rationally, and I realized that I could live without Julie. I was lonely and very sad, but I wasn't falling apart. I still went to work and did household chores. I came home and cooked myself a proper meal. I took care of the house and paid the bills. I could even imagine going out with friends, going on dates again, though I wasn't ready for that yet. On the day of Bethany's visit to her school, after I made sure Julie was going another day, I enjoyed chatting with her and also had a few good phone conversations with Brian. They both kept me interested in Julie, and I felt close to them, still close despite the problems in my marriage. The looks from the women at the gym helped a lot. They convinced me that Julie wasn't the only woman I could be attracted to. 43 is certainly not 26, but it's not 83 either. One Saturday, one of the women came up to me and asked me to help her use the weight machines. I was sure she already knew how to use them, but I didn't mind playing along. She was pretty, about 170 centimeters tall, with blonde curls and a nice trim figure. She was probably in her early 30s. After I helped her a bit, she rested, we chatted for a while, and then she invited me to the fitness club's snack bar for a bite to eat. Why not, I thought, and we went. We chatted sweetly for a few minutes about this and that. Then there was silence, and Denise said, "I've been divorced for about 2 years now. How about you?" I was a little taken aback by her directness, but replied, "Divorced. Divorced for only a few weeks. I don't know what's next yet." She smiled sincerely and said, "It gets easier after a while. But I was a little surprised by your answer. I noticed you weren't wearing your ring." "I took it off the day that, when my wife and I separated. It sits on the dresser at home and I see it every day. I just didn't feel like putting it on my finger right now." We finished lunch and I said, "Thanks for having me over, Denise. I really enjoyed it." She smiled broadly once more and said, It was my pleasure too, Alan. Depending on what broke up means, maybe we'll do it again someday. I continued to meet Denise at the gym after that, and we had 2 or 3 more Saturday lunches. It was so nice to be around an attractive woman who wasn't shy about letting me know she was interested in me. But it didn't get much further than talking. I wasn't ready for a new woman in my life yet. I wasn't sure I was over Julie, and she obviously understood at least some of what I was going through. The 2 months since the day I kicked Julie out fell on a Wednesday. I predicted that she would call in the morning and leave me a message. When I got home, it was her first call in weeks, and the first one I'd listened to. In a quiet voice, she said she would stop by after dinner and hoped I would talk to her. Sitting in the kitchen Wednesday night, I wondered what Julie would say. I hadn't yet made a final decision about what I wanted, but I realized that I couldn't wait for an answer. Julie's story. In retrospect, Alan was absolutely right. We both needed those 2 months. I certainly realized this, although it took a few weeks before I stopped being too upset to realize it. Having no idea what else to do, I went straight to my sister Sarah's house. She lives alone in a large apartment, and when she found me sobbing on her doorstep, she, of course, took me in. Sarah is a couple years older than me, and she has always been the logical and calm child in the family, while I was the impulsive one. She fed me soup, let me cry, made my bed in the guest room, and let me talk and talk and talk to her all weekend, but even Sarah couldn't make me truly realize what I had done. I knew I had broken my vows, hurt Alan's feelings, that it was wrong, blah, blah, blah. But Sarah saw that I didn't realize it, and after about a week she let me. Jesus, Julie, listen to yourself. You sound like you ruined Alan's favorite shirt in the laundry or crashed his car into a fire hydrant or forgot to pay the water bill. If I have to hear you tell me one more time how unreasonable he's being, I'll kick you out myself. I remained shockingly silent as she continued. You have absolutely no idea how serious this is and how much danger your marriage is in. I just blinked. I had nightmares in which I imagined Alan divorcing me, but somehow I couldn't believe he would do it. We had been married for over 20 years and had 2 wonderful children. I'd only slept with Bobby twice. Of course, he was going to give me another chance. I called a friend and got the number of a wonderful therapist she went to when she separated from her husband, Sarah continued. Here it is. Call her right now and make an appointment. Darlene Wysocki seemed too small and pretty to be a real therapist, but she proved to be a tough nut to crack. At our first appointment, she let me ramble on about the history of my marriage to Alan, then the circumstances of my flirtation with Bobby. I couldn't bring myself to call it an affair. Finally, my complaints about Alan not returning my calls, and so on. Near the end of the session, she interrupted me. Julie, besides your children, who do you love most in the world? Alan, I answered simply. What's the worst thing he could do to you, other than something ridiculous like kill you or your children? I just stared at her. The answer was obvious, but I hesitated to say it. Probably cheat on me, have an affair, fall in love with another woman and leave me. I sat there, shocked at the obvious implications of what I had just said. And why would his affair be so painful? Darlene continued. Because... I stopped, confused. There were so many reasons, I needed a minute to sort through them all. Because it would steal from me one of the most important parts of our relationship, my trust that he belongs only to me. Because it would destroy my confidence that he likes me. Because, oh my God, Darlene, because a million things. I was already crying, but Darlene just sat there looking at me in silence. After a few minutes, she quietly said, Julie, we need to stop for today. But until next time, I want you to think about why Alan's cheating can be so painful. All the reasons why it can be painful. That's what we need to talk about. When I opened the door to get out, she said, And Julie? We need to talk about your work, too. For the next 8 weeks, I met with Darlene twice a week. With her help, I began to realize how devastating Alan's cheating could be, and how devastated he must have felt because of what I had done. After the 3rd session, I went back to my office and quit my job. I had worked at that insurance agency for 11 years. I liked the people and I loved working there. But I realized I couldn't keep working in the same place as Bobby. Even if I lost Alan, and I prayed that wouldn't happen, I still needed to get away from Bobby. I had avoided talking or even looking at him since the day Alan kicked me out. I was too upset to even tell him that I'd been caught and that I couldn't see him anymore. But I think he guessed it. His eyes still followed me around the office, but he never once came up to talk to me. My boss was kind enough to give me a great letter of recommendation, and 3 weeks later, I found a similar job at another agency. I hated being away from all my old friends at work, but I knew I had to do it. And the energy it took to get used to the new routine and meet a lot of new people allowed me to not think about Alan, what I had done to him, and what was going to happen to us. After Darlene and I had listed all the ways my cheating had hurt Alan, that is, when I finally realized what I had done, we started talking about why I had done it. There didn't turn out to be many reasons, at least not good enough to make me feel like less of an idiot. But I did learn some things about myself worth thinking about and working on in the future. Also, Darlene gave me one thing that seemed like a real gift from God. She told me that people don't always act logically. Sometimes even smart and reasonable people go astray and do crazy, stupid, or self-destructive things. But one bad act doesn't make you a bad person. It just makes you the person who did something bad. What's more important is how you deal with what you did, how you make amends, how you do what you can to make things right. By the end of 2 months, I felt like a very different person than the one who jumped into bed with Bobby. I was sadder and more serious. I probably laughed a lot less and thought a lot more. But I also felt like I understood myself better. And I knew that I loved Alan and wanted to do everything I could to make it up to him. During this time, I had several wonderful visits and many good phone conversations with my children. I have completely stopped complaining to them about Alan. I told them that he and I were temporarily separated, that we were going through a difficult time, and that it was my fault. I asked that they not ask Alan or me for any details. I asked them to remember that we both love them more than anything, and will always be their devoted parents, whether we stay together or not. Both Brian and Bethany were great, patient, loving, and supportive of each other. I was so proud of how mature they had become. My sister generously allowed me to stay with her for the entire 2 months. I promised her that if Alan didn't let me go home for another week, I would be faced with the daunting task of finding an apartment. Alan's story. When Julie appeared on the doorstep, I stood at the open door and stared at her. My throat constricted, and my heart pounded in my chest. I didn't know if it was anger, resentment, or the love I still felt for her. "Hi, Alan," she said softly, looking directly at me. She seemed to want to hug me, but stopped herself. "Hi, Julie. Come on in. Do you want coffee?" We sat with cups in the living room, and she looked around at the familiar walls, furniture, and paintings. I realized how strange she felt, being banished from her home of over 20 years. "Alan, there's so much I want to tell you. Is it okay if I just come out and say it? You probably have something to tell me or ask me too, and I'll tell you everything you want to know. But can I start?" I just nodded. "The first and most important thing I have to say is this. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I did the rash, selfish, stupid thing of having sex with Bobby. I didn't realize at the time how deeply I had hurt you, but for the last 8 weeks I've been seeing a therapist and talking about it over and over again. And now I think I really realize what I did. I realize that I took the person I love most in the world aside from my children and hurt him in the worst way I was capable of." She spoke calmly, quietly, looking directly at me. though tears were running down her cheeks. Darlene, the therapist, made me think about how I would feel if you did that to me, and I really had to look right at it, and feel those feelings for myself. I won't claim to know how you feel, but I can tell you that I spent an awful lot of time thinking about it and imagining it. I'd said before that I'd always been sensitive to Julie's moods and could practically tell what she was feeling, but I had never seen her like this before. She spoke with a seriousness and directness that was completely new to me. I betrayed you so horribly, and I will never try to downplay it or pretend it wasn't what it really was. I know what I did and how awful it was. I had sex with another man. I initiated it. I did it with him in our bed. She paused for a moment, sobbing slightly, but pulled herself together and continued. And I did things with him. What I never did with you. What you wanted to do to me. But I refused. And it'd have gone on and on if you hadn't found out. I don't know how long, but I haven't come to terms with it yet. Alan, she said suddenly, do you want to talk? Do you want to yell at me or call me those words I'm sure you've thought of 1,000 times already? Should I stop and let you say something? No, Julie, I'm sure I'll have something to say to you, but right now I don't mind listening. You've obviously thought this through carefully, and frankly, I'm impressed. Your attitude is very different from the last time we spoke. She smiled embarrassedly, her cheeks still moist. Yes, but I was still in complete denial then, Alan. But if you can, let me say at least one more thing. I don't know what you want now, and I'm really scared to ask, but I want to come home and be your wife. I want to show you that I am very sorry for what I have done, and to show you that I can love you so much and so well that you will want to stay with me. She sobbed furiously again. You haven't asked yet, but I haven't talked to Bobby once since the day you kicked me out. I've been staying with my sister and quit my job at the agency. I found another job at Williams & Prentice, and so far it's going well. You really quit your job? I asked, surprised. Julie only nodded, then gradually pulled herself together and stopped crying. We sat in silence, each of us full of our own thoughts. I stood up and started pacing around the room. I didn't know what to expect, Julie, but I was more than ready to kick you out of the house if you came in with that attitude. I'm sure the last 2 months haven't been too much fun for you, but you can't imagine what it's been like for me. I had a wife who I knew loved me, respected me, and desired me. Maybe our sex life was a little sparse, but it was a compromise that suited me. And now I don't know what I have. A big hole has formed where my trust in you used to be, and an even bigger hole where my confidence used to be. Confidence in myself as a man, as your husband, and as your lover. She only nodded, her eyes sparkling again. I've learned something about myself in the last 2 months, Julie. I've realized that I can do without you. I really can live the rest of my life without you. I can run a household, feed myself, keep in touch with my children. I might even be able to find someone else to love and respect me. She stared at me intently, and now I realized how she felt. She was absolutely terrified. So, if we're going to be together, I concluded, I need to convince her that I'll be better off with you than without you, and that it's worth going through the constant pain to realize that. Because honestly, I could probably get rid of the pain a lot faster if we just divorced and I moved on, maybe find someone else. Let's be honest, okay? Every time I see you, talk to you, hug you, I'm going to think about you and Bobby. About how what we had meant so little to you that you could jump into bed with him. I was calm, speaking softly even though my heart was pounding. And how the hell am I supposed to make love to you again? To my surprise, she didn't gasp. She just kept looking at me and listening. The scary part, Julie, the scariest part, and there's a lot of scary stuff out there, believe me, it's the sexual things you did to him that you would never do to me. I started to speak further, but then stopped abruptly. What was the point of this? She knew what I was talking about. I could see it in her face. Her expression had changed. She was no longer afraid for herself or worried about marriage. She sympathized with my pain. I continued to ponder in some strange way, enjoying the silence. After a few minutes, she said, "Why don't I buy us some ice cream and we'll go for a walk in the backyard? I miss our trees." We sat outside with the ice cream and talked about the yard and the work I had done. Then we chatted about the kids and talked about our visits with them. We walked around the yard and Julie told me a little about her new job. She complimented me on my tighter, more muscular appearance, and I told her about getting more exercise at the gym. A few hours passed, and I realized that my mood had become calm and uplifted, which surprised me. Good feelings just crept up on me. I was enjoying Julie's company and not thinking about what she had done that had come between us. Of course, at that thought, I tensed up again. Julie noticed it on my face and waited a few moments before she spoke again. "Alan," she said very quietly, looking down, "do you think it would be okay if I came home, even if only for a little while? I'll sleep in the guest room or wherever you want. And our relationship can be whatever you want it to be. I'm so anxious not to lose you." I realized she was really scared again. This was the moment of truth. For a couple minutes, I sat in silence. I had certainly considered the possibility, but before I said anything, I wanted to be sure, and admittedly, I didn't mind Julie sitting in suspense a little longer. "Okay," I said finally. "I think you should sleep in the guest room for now." "Honestly, Julie, I didn't expect to want you to move in with us. My feelings haven't cooled yet, but I've been very impressed with what you've told me. I feel like we have a chance." I realized she wanted to move into my arms, so I let her snuggle up against me. The hug was tight and very warm. I hadn't hugged her or any other woman in over 2 months, and the feelings were almost overwhelming. We hadn't spoken. I loved the feel and smell of her. I realized how horny I was. It made me think about sex. It made me think about her and Bobby, which made me furious again. I broke the embrace and stepped back. Julie saw it all in my face. She lowered her eyes and said, "I know. I'm sorry, Alan." Julie went back to her sister to pack her bag and then carried her things into the guest room. We agreed that I would help her move the rest of her things home over the weekend. After our tense conversation, I think we were both exhausted. We quietly said goodnight without touching each other and retired to our bedrooms. The next morning, I got up early, but Julie was already in the kitchen. Fresh coffee and a big breakfast were waiting for me, and my wife was looking at me with hope and some fear. We still hadn't touched each other, but I smiled at her and we ate together, sharing the newspaper and reading passages to each other as we had done for years. It was very strange, simply because it was so familiar and so good. When our plates were empty and we had a second cup of coffee each, I looked at her and said, "Julie, can you tell me why?" She blushed slightly, but didn't take her eyes off me. "Alan, I want to tell you everything, but first I have to tell you that I have no excuses. There are reasons for what I did, but none of them excuses me. None of them make it any less horrible, any less selfish, okay?" I nodded. Julie talked for a while longer, mentioning some things that were new to me and others I'd already thought about. This was our first year with both kids out of the house, and she was feeling a little restless. She still had a job that she enjoyed, but a big part of her life as a mom, suddenly seemed complete. It made her feel a little useless and scared of middle age. And we'd been married for over 20 years, and sex had become pretty routine. I hated to hear this complaint since she was the one who always refused to try anything new, but I sat quietly and listened. Men were always interested in Julie because she was very pretty and had a great figure, with breasts almost too big for her small stature. She was used to being flirted with and receiving passes from men, and this attention gave her pleasure. This went on the whole time we were together, and neither of us gave it a second thought. But Bobby caught her at a point where she felt vulnerable, and wondered if she was getting old and losing her attractiveness. And his passivity, the fact that he was looking at her with obvious interest but making no movement, confused and intrigued her. In all likelihood, this was Bobby's standard way of getting a woman, and it probably worked with many of them. "Again, Alan," she said seriously, "none of this is an excuse. I don't have any excuses. But the last thing I want to say is what Darlene told me. Sometimes a person, even the person who knows best, does something really, really stupid. Or really, really bad. It's not logical. It doesn't make any sense, but they do it." Suddenly, out of the blue, she cried again. "And that's what I've done. And all I want is to make it up to you, and for you to take me back." She stopped, crying heavily. I felt the instinct to take her in my arms to become her comforting husband, but I just couldn't do it. I walked over to her, took her hand, and just looked at her while she cried. Julie's story. A couple weeks later, I was encouraged, but at the same time very scared. I couldn't believe how much Alan and I had become good friends again, sharing life with each other like we used to. We watched TV together, ran errands together, cooked together, and talked about everything in the world. We talked about the kids, about work, about friends, but we also spent a lot of time talking about my cheating, his worries about it, and how we should move forward. It shocked me that when I came back, he didn't wear his wedding ring. But a couple days later, without any conversation, it was back on his finger. I was so grateful for his patience. At unexpected moments, I could see the anger boiling up in him. I could almost feel the heat of it sitting across the room. But he controlled himself until it passed. Sometimes our conversations became acrimonious, but never unpleasant. I felt he was much fairer to me than I deserved, or than I might have been if the situation had been the other way around. But if as friends we were wonderful, as lovers, we were nothing. We hugged occasionally and once held hands at a movie, but nothing more than that. I was still living in the guest room, and there was no sign of that changing any time soon. It wasn't that we didn't talk about sex. We talked about it a lot, and Alan was very open about his feelings. "Even though we're doing well, Julie, and I'm sometimes amazed at how well, it hurts me to even imagine making love to you. When I think of you taking my 20 years of fidelity and pissing on them. And how can I compete with a 26-year-old who can probably get aroused 4 times in a day?" He was right, and I knew it, and I said so. And I said that I hoped that in time, our 2 times with Bobby would pale in comparison to the hundreds or thousands of times Alan and I had made love. It was a matter of physical pleasure and nothing more. He didn't make me feel loved and secure like you do. Yes, but he must have made you feel something good, or you wouldn't have invited him back for a second, would you? Alan cast a glance at me, then sighed. Julie, I know sarcasm won't help, but I don't know what to say. Of course I want you, but there's too much resentment and insecurity in me. I'm no match for a 26-year-old hottie, and realizing that you've given him what you haven't given me is a pretty big hurdle. I continued to see Darlene twice a week, and she really helped me understand how Alan felt. I had 2 options, and I tried them. Alan, honey, what I did was horrible. We both know it. The first man I tried those positions with should have been you. Until the day I die, I'll wish I could take it all back, but I can't. But each of these moments only happened once. I want all the other kinds of other sex in my life to be with you. I want to please you like this over and over again and learn with you how to please you best. I shouldn't have started with anyone else, but please let me continue with you. He smiled weakly. That's a good way to think about it, Julie. I know what you say is true. It's just not easy to go through what I'm feeling. I know, I said, and held out the book I was holding to him. Let me tell you about her, okay? He looked at it with some amazement. 101 Poses for Great Sex. Hardly your cup of tea, I'd think. I smiled at him as lovingly as I could. I bought it about a week ago, and I've been looking through it at night. There's a lot in there that we've never done, that I've never done with anyone. I've bookmarked it a few times to mark the ones I'm particularly excited about. Alan, I know I've robbed you of something that should have been yours, but there are things in this book that will belong only to us and no one else. And I promise you that I'm ready and willing to try anything you want. I want it to belong only to you. I smiled at him and felt tears come to my eyes again. I had done everything I could. I really didn't know what else to do. Alan's story. It had been almost 4 weeks, and where were we? I didn't know. Julie was back in the house. We were doing well, and I even enjoyed seeing her every day, enjoyed eating with her and talking about everything in the world. I loved our life together. This was my wife, and I never stopped loving her. My anger and resentment was no longer directed at Julie, but much more narrowly at Julie as a sexual being. We could be friends, we could be parents together, we could laugh and talk and hold hands, but as soon as the possibility of sex arose, even if only in my imagination, the hurt feelings overwhelmed me. So not only did we not make love, we didn't even kiss, apart from a light smack when we left for work in the morning. We had a couple of nice hugs, but they were warm, friendly. As soon as they started squinting at me, I would get angry and pull away. Julie was patient and loving. I couldn't realize how much working with a therapist had helped her, that she had become more self-aware and understanding of my feelings. I sensed a maturity and nobility in her that had not been present during her brief affair with Bobby. In many ways, I felt more than ever that this was the woman I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. Except, I couldn't have sex with her. Part of me wanted to, of course. I couldn't stop being drawn to her, and she made it clear that she was ready and willing whenever I said so. She didn't insist, but she did let me see her in her sexiest nighties a couple times when she came into my room, just to say goodnight. And the book of sexual positions she gave me was quite interesting, especially for a man who hadn't had sex in about 3 months. Some of them seemed to require advanced gymnastic skills, but there were also a few that I would have loved to try if the situation had been different. And I was definitely excited at the thought of the half-dozen or so that Julie had specifically marked as arousing for her. So we were stuck. Or perhaps I was all alone. I couldn't think about making love to Julie without feeling angry and humiliated. How could a guy survive that? In short, we had reached an impasse, and I didn't know how to get out of it. I had given her 23 years of my life. 23 years of love, loyalty, and everything I had. Her name was Laura. We were high school sweethearts. We built a life from the ground up. 2 kids, a home with minimal debt, common struggles, endless memories. I believed we were invincible. That is, until one day she shattered it all. It began with subtle changes. Late nights, at work. A new fragrance she never wore around me, that empty look in her eyes when we talked. I attributed it to a midlife rut. Perhaps we both needed a reset. I had a weekend trip planned to revive what we once had, but she canceled at the last minute. Said she had meetings. I didn't ask her. I should have. Then one night, I returned home early from a canceled conference. Her car was not in the driveway, but her purse remained on the table. That's when I knew something was wrong. I went to our shared laptop and saw crushed emails, hundreds of them, from a man named Nathan, a guy she used to work with. The words searing into my memory. I'm looking forward to waking up next to you every day. I'm tired of hiding. Soon it'll just be us. No more pretending. 2 days later, she brought me to sit down, said that she wasn't happy, that she needed to find herself. No mention of Nathan. She didn't know I already knew. That night, she left with 2 suitcases and a smile I hadn't seen in years, but not for me. For him. I was wrecked. The kids were grown and gone. The house was quiet. Her name was the whispers on every corner. But over time, I discovered power in my alone time. Therapy, the gym, new hobbies. A year passed, then two. I picked up my life, piece by piece. And when I finally moved on and I was at peace, that's when she returned. It was a rainy Sunday morning that she knocked on my door. I hardly recognized her. Tired eyes, thin frame, tears already falling. "Nathan left me," she said. "He claimed he never wanted actual commitment." I made a mistake. "Please, can we try again?" I looked at her. The very same woman who once held all I loved in her palms and shattered it with a breath. I remembered the nights I cried myself to sleep, a silence that screamed louder than any argument and the broken man she left behind. "I'm happy now," I said. "You were my everything once. But you showed me I could do better." "I am not second best for you, Laura. Not your backup plan." She sobbed, tried to touch my hand, but it was too late. I gently closed the door. And this time, I smiled. When the door clicked shut behind her, I pressed against it, heart thudding, not from pain but from the finality. I was no longer the man she had left. That man would have crumbled. But this one? He had already risen from the ashes. Later that night, I told Emma about it, my girlfriend of 7 months. Yeah, I found love again. Not the fireworks and fairy tales kind, but something deeper. Emma was silent when Laura was vocal, steady, grounded. She entered my life like a gradual sunrise. No drama, just warmth. She stayed quiet while I talked. Then she said, "You did the right thing. Folks like that, they come crawling back when the grass wasn't greener." I nodded my head because I knew how right that was. But Laura wasn't done. For the next several weeks, she messaged. Long emails, voicemails at 2 a.m. She even turned up at my daughter's birthday dinner, claiming she was just dropping off a gift. My daughter, God bless her, kept it polite, but distant. She knew what her mother did. One day I received a call from Nathan's wife. Yeah, turns out he had one. Still does. Apparently, Laura was completely in the dark. She was just the side piece, a bright object in Nathan's midlife crisis. When the affair was revealed, Nathan dumped her cold and begged his wife for forgiveness. She gave him a second chance. Ironic, isn't it? The same grace which Laura never offered me. I did not reply to any of Laura's pleas. Closure did not arrive in the guise of revenge or a vindictive, "I told you so." It came quietly, of having my novice relationship be a peaceful one. I awoke to wonder why I was waking up anymore. In the laughter I shared with friends, I nearly shoved aside during my darkest hour. Then one day I ran into her at the grocery store, alone. She seemed older than one of her years should have, tired. She smiled gently and raised a hesitant wave. I nodded respectfully, but unmoved. Later I found a note on my windshield. "I will regret always losing you. I wish I had appreciated what I had before it disappeared." I folded it up, threw it away, and drove off with Emma, hand in hand, music blaring, windows open. Because when someone leaves everything you built behind for a fling, they don't deserve the keys to the house they set on fire. That note on my windshield was 3 months ago. Life with Emma had taken on a certain reality. Weekend trips, quiet mornings, dinners with my kids. She was beginning to feel like family. Then came the fundraiser. It was a gala for the local hospital, an evening of music, wine, and charity. Emma and I were on the guest list. I was wearing my favorite navy blazer. She looked incredible in a fitted black gown. We laughed as though we were the only two in the room. Until we weren't. I saw her out of the corner of my eye, Laura, alone, holding a half-finished glass of red wine, wearing something smart but fraying at the seams like her smile. She spotted us. The moment froze. Emma's hand tightened around mine slightly. I didn't move. But Laura did. She approached slowly, her eyes darting between us, taking in the entwined hands, the nearness, the calm she no longer belonged to. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. Emma glanced at me. I gave her a nod. "Go ahead," she said. "I'll be at the bar." Laura waited for Emma to leave and then leaned in. "You really put that behind you," she said, attempting to sound light-hearted, but cracked. "I never thought you would. I thought, after all that, we had history, Michael." I took a slow breath. "We had history," I agreed. "But history is just that. History has passed. You decided our story needed rewriting with someone else. And now I'm drafting my future with someone who never made me feel like I was an option." She flinched, but I wasn't finished. "You didn't only break my heart, you buried it. And I had to tunnel my way out by myself. You cannot come back and sit at the table you set fire to." Tears welled up in her eyes. "He lied to me, Michael. He used me. I lost everything." I stared at her. Not with rage, not with love, just pity. "You didn't lose everything," I told him. "You gave it away." And with that, I turned and went back to Emma, who handed me a glass of wine and kissed my cheek, as if she already knew the whole story without me having to say a word. Laura looked on from across the room, alone again. But this time it was for good. The restaurant we ended up at that evening had always fascinated me. It had an unmistakable personality, ebullient decor, inspired food, and flawless sound. At a time when so many establishments were going for unfinished, modern ceilings that only needed to be extinguished by echoing sounds and hindering the uniqueness of a dining experience, this place was a challenge. There, in a gorgeously preserved historic space, this had been painstakingly converted into a classy steakhouse, all the while keeping its original architectural grandeur. This venue had 7 different dining rooms over 2 floors, all nicely decorated, just enough room between the tables for an intimate and romantic evening. But tonight was far from romantic. My wife, Kathy, sat across from me. We took a lower-level table and all the coziness disappeared, leaving an ether of discomfort. She was squirming, not meeting my eyes, clearly uncomfortable. And yet, hidden in her nervous exterior was a flicker of determination in her eyes. I mostly stayed quiet, only speaking enough to order our drinks and get settled. I looked at the menu and thought about the blackberry fusion for a moment before landing on the beef tenderloin tornado with a burgundy sauce. I slowly sipped my single malt whiskey on the rocks and watched Kathy. She was still a striking woman, vibrant, accomplished, someone I had once revered. But my feelings about her had altered, even unbeknownst to her. I had been quietly taking root, and tonight she would understand. What I was about to tell her would rip her world to shreds, maybe even shatter everything that we had created. My name is Ben Jones. I am 49, a software account executive, and have been married to Kathy for 28 years. This woman sitting opposite me now, though, was a stranger. "Yes, Kathy," I said, letting the words out slowly, steeling myself for the conversation to come. "Well, that's a surprise," she said, edged with surprise. "You finally have something to say." Her irritation was evident. "You've always had a way with words, Ben," she continued, with a note of sarcasm in her voice. "Thanks for that," I said in a neutral tone. "For the first time, I'm not being sarcastic." I let the words hang between us, peering into her eyes before I took another drink. She averted her eyes immediately when the waiter came over. After I had passed my menu, I placed an order, choosing the blackberry eat with Spanish rice. Kathy, not sure what to make of either my demeanor or the grimy menus at hand, skimmed through one and ordered a salad, an uninspired choice for a steakhouse. After the waiter had gone, she returned to me. "Ben, I've been thinking a lot recently," she said, choosing her words carefully. "About us. About you. About me." She paused, then said, "And I want to give my thoughts." I traced the condensation on my glass and then spoke. "There is a difference between late and too late." She frowned. "What are you talking about?" "A day late and $1 short," I said, taking another languorous sip. "Go on, Kathy. Say what's on your mind. I'm listening." She took a breath, steadying herself. "I think we ought to explore a period of separation. Not forever, just a little space. An opportunity for me to work things out. For both of us, really." I let out a breath, my face inscrutable. "No." Kathy's head jerked up, a strand of blonde hair hanging over her face. "What do you mean, no?" "A separation might be good for us." Her voice lowered, her smile nearly soft. "It might even help me remember what I used to love about you." But there was no warmth in her tone, no affection, no triumph. It was the kind of patience one used when trying to calm down a child who was trying to stay up past bedtime. "I have no desire to rekindle anything with you, Kathy," I said determinedly. "I cannot bear to listen to any more rationalizations of your actions. Let's not pretend. You want a separation so you can be with someone else." Her eyes went wide, real disbelief hitting her face. "That's not true. I'm not trying to take your job. I'm not seeking someone new. I feel that our marriage has lost its spark, and I wonder if spending some time apart could help us find ourselves again." "Yeah, Kath," I responded, my voice steady yet determined. "We're not excited about each other anymore." I nodded, my voice level but uncharacteristic of me. "You are correct about one thing, Kathy. Our marriage is not so hot. But more than that, it has grown stale. For the last 2 years, I have tried everything I give to change that. But it has been a battle waged in solitude. Our relationship, rather than being a partnership, has devolved into a tangle of conflicting interests. 3 individuals pulling in different directions." I raised one hand, preempting her argument before she could say it. "You've replaced me, Kathy. You broke my trust, and now you want me to agree to this, while you see if it works out between you and Roger pretending to be fixing things between us. I will not sit somewhere and watch while you try to make sense of your betrayal." Kathy's face contorted with rage as she gripped her napkin tighter, her knuckles whitening. She hissed, eyes narrowing. "You're wrong. I haven't been unfaithful. Roger is not a stand-in for you." I remained composed. "Then tell me, Kathy, what do you call it? Even if you've never cheated physically, you've already pushed me aside emotionally. You've welcomed him into the most sacred places of your life, the spaces that used to be ours." She fidgeted and lowered her voice. "Ben, please, keep your voice down. There's no reason to make this a public spectacle." "Why not?" I countered. "You've already announced it to the public, so tell me, who knew about our separation before me?" Her gaze wavered, darting aside. "Well, I probably mentioned it to Roger a couple of times." I arched an eyebrow. "So you talked about the future of our marriage with another man before you even talked to your own husband? That's not deceitful?" I leaned forward slightly. "You're making decisions about our life with him contributing to that, and me in no way the wiser. That, Kathy, is betrayal. Roger has more clout in this marriage than I do." Her cheeks flushed, and she looked away just as the waitress appeared, setting down our plates carefully and retreating quickly, sensing the tension. I rewarded her with a slight nod, which only aggravated Kathy further. "You're making a big deal about this," she muttered, nearly inaudibly. "Roger is just a friend. He listens. He knows without judgment who I am. He's been someone to lean on." I put my glass down hard and deliberate. "Let's be clear, Kathy. You crossed a line. You have disrespected our marriage, insulted my intelligence, and put our future in jeopardy. Roger appears to be a great human diary, but he's pulling strings in this whole thing and it's got to stop. Her breath caught, stunned, but I ignored her and focused on the waiter checking in on our meal. Everything is great, thank you, I replied effortlessly. Kathy's voice returned, defensive and clipped. I'm not a cheater, Ben. And you're wrong about Roger. I haven't betrayed you. I stared back at her with absolute determination. The way you confided in him, how you've sought his advice, shared things with him you never shared with me. It's almost as if you've already crossed the line. And frankly, it disgusts me. Plups. She seemed shaken, but I did not falter. I concentrated on my filet, enjoying its full taste, the only thing worth remembering about the evening. After a few bites, I slid the plate away and drank some water. Her voice softened. Ben, I never meant to hurt you. That was never my intention. My glass hit the table sharply, shattering the air. Don't lie, Kathy. You knew how much this would hurt me. That's why you didn't tell anyone. You don't get to play innocent when you made a conscious effort to fool me. I pulled $200 from my wallet, put it on the table, and stood up. I took the last sip of my scotch and gave her one last look. Too late, Kathy. There's no undoing it. We're already in the process of getting a divorce. No matter how much she protested, begged for counseling, promised to clean her act up, threatened unreasonable things, our divorce continued. She initially declined to sign the papers, saying she wanted to talk further. But I stood firm. I let it be known that there would be no talking until it was all settled. For the sake of our children and grandchildren, I wanted a clean break. Finally, the divorce was resolved. Our assets were split evenly, and I moved on with life. A few months later, Kathy wrote me an accusatory letter, asking me why I so readily gave up on our marriage without a fight. I didn't argue. All I had done was send her a photo, an image she had texted me 3 days after that dinner, a picture of her with Roger. She had begun dating him the week after we split. After that, I never heard from her again. These days, I rarely date. I am at peace without the hubbub, without being busy, without everybody clinging to the edge of my pants and screaming, without fried foods, without sitting next to horrible people who don't know how to shut their mouths. I'm content with a casual companion now and then. Initially, my children took Kathy's side, not knowing exactly what had happened, but I quietly posed the question to them. If the husband or wife lost interest in them and sought emotional comfort from someone else, would they just shrug their shoulders and accept that? Or would they allow their partner to drift away with impunity? In due time, they did see the truth, and our relationship strengthened, while their relationship to Kathy weakened. Soon after that, she remarried but divorced again. Her association with Roger, just a short-lived mistake, was never anything serious. I never asked for details. I got early retirement, went to countryside, and had a simple, quiet life which made me happy. I no longer gave energy to someone who had not valued and returned my love. Even while mourning the woman I had once married, the life we had planned together, I reveled in the freedom that was so liberating in leaving behind an unfulfilling marriage. Kathy had left our relationship in spirit well before the official paperwork made it so, but ultimately I had no regrets.